It's time now for the latest news on what's hot and what's not in the world of technology with Matthew Dickerson on Tech Talk. Here on DCFM 88.9.
Morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Richard. Good to be talking to you again.
Yeah, likewise, mate. Looks like we're going to get our tail feathers wet today, but at this stage, not much happening. But I just mentioned as a bit of a promo for what you're going to talk about this morning, the European Union is putting its foot down regarding e-waste, and it's going to solve the problem, I think, by making everybody use a USB-C plug-in device to plug the device into, of course. And Apple, of course, don't have that on their phone. So that's going to make them upset, isn't it?
I'm not sure who's going to win this argument, Richard. When you've got all of Europe versus Apple, you would think that Europe would win, but Apple like to throw their weight around a bit, and they're not particularly impressed about the direction the European Union is going. It all started back in about 2009 when the European Union started going down this path, because back in those days, you may remember, every different phone that you bought, every different device, electronic device you bought, had a different type of connector. And that meant that every time you replaced it, you threw out the old connector, you put the new one in. And it got to the point where the European Union back in those days said, why don't you kind of work out some standard just to the industry in general? And that started to slowly happen. We got micro USB, and then we got to the stage with USB-C. So it started to narrow down to the point now where we're pretty much at the point where USB-C is the standard. That's mobile phones, Android phones, for example, tablets, devices, computers, even the light on my bike. When I plug it in to charge up my light, it's got a USB-C connector. So that sounds like it all makes sense. But Apple have said, no, two things here. We believe that our Lightning port is better than USB-C, and it's in basically stopping innovation if you make us go down a certain path. And we think it'll contribute to e-waste, because if you make us go that way, everyone's got to buy USB-C when they might have a Lightning connector. Now, ignore the minor little point with Apple that their iPad mini, their iPad Air and their iPad Pro, they already use USB-C. So if this was a big problem with USB-C, then Apple have already said, well, we're in the game. But their mobile phones and their standard iPad still have Lightning. And one of the things there is they like Lightning because every time someone makes a connector or a device that uses Lightning, they've got to license that from Microsoft and pay Apple. They've got to pay Apple a little tiny bit of money every time someone uses one of those other devices. In other words, manufactures one of those. So it's going to be a bit of a battle that goes on. It makes sense, Richard. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to everyone in the industry except Apple. So stay tuned to see how this battle plays out.
I mean, they could make an adapter, couldn't they?
They do make adapters at the moment, but it seems a bit pointless because then you've still got another device there. It may go to the point where next year's iPhone, for example, may have no ports on it. That's a common rumour we've heard. There'll be no ports at all, and you'll transfer data by having a wireless adapter of some description. So that may be the way they get around the whole USB-C problem.
Yeah, probably because Andrew was talking this morning about the iPhone 14. And 13 has just been out, but apparently the iPhone 14 is going to be completely radical, completely different, and they're going to start, or they've already started from the ground, and they're working upwards on a brand new phone. Maybe that will have one of that particular device inside it as well.
Could well do, yeah. The rumours start early, don't they? It's been a week since the iPhone 13 has been released, and so already we're into the rumours.
Indeed, that's amazing. All right, the New South Wales Police have a bit of trouble. They're geo-targeting of missing persons with text messages. All very good, sounds good in theory, but it's not working terribly well in practice.
Well, the practice is a bit of a problem because the geo-targeting is very clever. You've got Vodafone, Optus, Telstra all on board with the police. If there's a missing person or a vulnerable person that's gone missing, then they can actually send text messages to people in that local vicinity. So the technology there is really clever. But we've had ScamWatch and the Australian Federal Police and all sorts of different police forces around the world saying, do not click on those links. When you get these text messages, don't click on these links. Please stay away from these links. And then the police send out a message to say, have you seen this person? Click on the link to have a look at the photo of this person. So it's a bit of confused messaging from people, and some feedback from people in general has been, well, I'm not going to click on a link because we've been told not to click on a link. That can be a great way to infect our phone. It can be a great way to cause some problems for ourselves. So we'll just ignore them altogether. The police have come out somewhat naively, I must admit, Richard, and said it's okay when the message comes from the police, it will be from the number 444-444-444. But it's very easy to spoof a mobile phone number. It's very easy to make a text message come from any number. So now everyone out there is going to say, oh, that's easy. We'll just send a message for all those fours, and then we'll look like a legitimate message. Please click on this link. Click on the link. That might be infecting your phone with a virus. So the logic is great from the police to be able to get information out there. But as soon as you put a link in any message that comes out to people, to me, that's something to stay away from. And any of my clients to talk about it, I'd say if it's got a link in it, just ignore the link. Do not click on the link. So it's a great idea, but I'm not sure how they're going to get around that particular problem.
Well, I don't know either. I mean, we're getting these postal ones at the moment. I get 2 or 3 of those a day saying, your parcel is ready to be delivered and all that sort of rubbish.
Yep.
And, you spend half a morning trying to delete them off your phone. Block, delete, block, delete, block, delete. But anyway, that's another story. It's a shame because the idea of finding missing people that way is a good one, but it is a shame. And quite frankly, if I get anything, click to this link that I'm not sure about, I will not do it.
Yeah, that's right.
You're crazy if you do,
Yeah.
because you're going to get yourself into all sorts of strife. Actually, you should have a phone. We should have another phone where you can click on all those links and have nothing to it, so you can annoy these people. Have 2 phones.
Yeah.
But anyway, you still got to get them off the first one too. So that's what's happening there with the police. Douglas Adams released a science fiction book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Great book. And it used various ways to communicate. And apparently Google has got some new buds that's going to help.
Well, the thing that I used to love in the Hitchhiker's Guide series was the Babel fish. You'd put the Babel fish in your ear, and then instantly you could understand any language spoken on any of the planets you might visit around the galaxy as you tripped around the galaxy. Sounds like a great idea, and of course it's science fiction. But we see more and more these days, Richard. People are coming up with these concepts that have been first thought of with science fiction and then putting them into the real world. So you can now get the little Pixel Buds from Google. And if you put those Pixel Buds in, and let's say you were from another country, I put the Pixel Buds in your ear, connect up to my phone, and I say that I want to talk in a different language. So I'm trying to learn Italian, or I'm trying to learn Greek, whatever it might be. And when I speak, automatically what will happen is in near real time, not perfectly in real time, but in near real time, each sentence that I speak will then be translated by my phone, and you'll hear that in the buds in a different language. And then when the person speaks back, so if someone speaks back in another language, then it will be translated back, and then I'll hear that back in English. So effectively, it's almost at the point I could have a communication with someone without a translator in the middle, and the buds would sit there and basically do that translation for me. It's not perfect, and I've actually used translation apps when I've been overseas, and you've just got to check. When you speak in English, you can actually see the English version on your phone screen to see what it listened or what it thought it heard you say before it then translates it. So you get a bit of an idea that it's getting your parts of it right, and then the translation is hopefully being done vaguely correctly, but it's a great way to be able to translate or communicate with people from around the world.
Yes, indeed, except I imagine at this stage, because not quite in real time, that you would get a translation of something like this, and it would take some time to convert.
Well, I think what you'd more do is probably talk in a sentence at a time. So you might talk a sentence and then pause and let it translate.
No. Now, what I'm saying is, if I said to you, "Good morning, Matthew, how are you?" and it gets translated into whatever language, maybe that language would be hearing as a "Good morning, Matthew." It would be slightly behind and maybe a bit hard to hear.
Yeah, I think that part of it's not too bad. So the flow of the language as it speaks is not too bad. Anyone that's communicated with Siri or Google, or any of those sort of voice ones, they're not too bad in what they speak. It would just be that initial delay rather than that stilted delivery of delays. So it doesn't sound too much like a computer. So that part's not too bad. One of the things that I would like about it, same as me, you've been in situations where you've had a human translator and you'll talk maybe 20 seconds and wait for the translation to occur, and the translation takes 2 seconds, and you think, how did you say what I just said in 20 seconds in 2 seconds? Or vice versa. You might say something brief and then they give you a very long version of that translation back, and you're thinking, I'm not quite sure that's exactly what I said. Whereas this, at least, you'd be able to see on screen what it was translating to.
Indeed, and I've had that happen. And of course, using Australianisms, and you see the eyes glaze over at the translator.
That's right. How do I translate that?
How do I translate that? Indeed, we're very good at it. I've got to say, even in America, a couple of times, last time I was there, I had to do some swift translation and slow the English down, and while they tuned into my accent,
Yeah.
it was interesting. But that always happens. Pommies don't seem to have too much trouble, but the Yanks do.
Yeah, indeed.
Tiny sensors,
Yeah.
inspired by gliding seeds to monitor the environment. What's all this about?
It's quite incredible that what we end up with sometimes is we look at nature and we say, wow, nature got that pretty well right. Why don't we just steal the idea, copy the idea? And in monitoring the environment, one of the things that's really difficult to do is to get sensors up into lots of different parts of the environment. You can put drones up there, but it's really only sensing things that are in that particular area around that drone. So things can change a fair bit. So some scientists have come up with some little tiny micro sensors, and we're talking about things that are the size of seeds, even as small as, say, grains of sand. And what they do in those sensors is they don't make them fly per se, they make them fall very slowly. Just like seeds are picked up in the wind and distributed around so they can cross-pollinate with other plants, these devices can be dropped from a plane, or in fact they can be sent up with a gust of wind and then distributed around, and the sensors in them can actually send back information. So they're that small. So we're talking about something the size of a seed, and they can actually send back information in what it's sensing. Now, they've obviously got one use, and they've got very limited use, but they can do that sort of sensing of the environment, what the air quality is, what's in the air at the time, and all this information can come back from something which blows me away that is that small. So again, we look at what's in nature, we steal the idea, and we let the wind blow these around in nature.
All right, and we don't have balloons anymore for
Well,
weather and things like that.
Different things. I think you'll still have balloons that are used for different things, but these are designed to really just monitor what's happening in the environment rather than just give us a direct measurement of, say, temperature, which might be happening. So you might be looking at even things as accurate as pH. What are the pH levels up in the environment? And obviously lots of the different things around CO2. So it's just a really good way to get that intricate information but spread across a whole area rather than a balloon, which might be just in one particular area.
That makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. That's rather good. Matt, good talking with you as usual. We've run out of time. I was going to hop onto cryptocurrency and what China are doing. I'll just mention that later because I've got a bit of a story about cryptocurrency anyway myself, dabbling as I have in Bitcoin.
Right.
And having a bit of fun with Bitcoin.
Well, don't try and spend it in China then, will you?
No, China have banned it, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another story. We will catch up with you next week for Tech Talk, and you put all your Tech Talk business online now, don't you, so people can have a little bit of a listen.
Yeah, so on podcast, on YouTube, so you can catch up with it if you miss it live on DCFM.
Yeah, and, of course, here live on DCFM. Talk to you next week, mate.
Thanks, Richard.
See you then.